I wish I didn't put off beating the game as long as I did, but I beat it at like
Jeff beat it last night.
2:00.
Oh, nice.
I was like, I read everywhere. Everyone's like 5 hours, and I'm like, I texted Nathan like, I'm 9 hours in.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Backlog and Beyond, the podcast where we talk about the old video games we want to beat and the new ones we play instead. I'm your host, Nathan Hawkins.
And I'm your other host, Jeff Zavatero, and this is episode number 34.
As always, we have an amazing show for you, but tonight is even more special because we have a new segment called Inside the Indie, where we deep dive into like an indie game as well as highlight the people behind it. Because tonight we have a special guest. We're talking about the side-scrolling cinematic platformer Unto the End, and we are so fortunate to have him with us, our special guest, Stephen Danton, one of the two developers from Two Ton Studios. Welcome, Stephen. How you going? How's it going?
Awesome, guys. Thanks so much for having me. Really excited to chat.
Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Now, is this the first game for Two Ton Studios, like your debut? Basically?
Yes, this is our debut. We did like some small games and some mobile things in the past, but this is our first like real game, quote unquote real game. Yeah,
quote unquote.
Absolutely.
That is awesome. Well, congratulations on that.
Thanks so much.
For those of you who are in Twitch stream right now, we are live on Twitch right now. So if you do have any questions for Steven, feel free to post those in chat. And our amazing moderator, Emily, aka PokeStarWind, will start collecting those for us, and then we will read those during the live Q&A after the show. So before we dive in to talking about Unto the End, we usually talk about what we're playing. So, Jeff, what have you been playing this week?
I am still in the middle of Spider-Man Remastered,
Right.
having a really hard time because like I already beat it and I have a hard time beating it again.
I bet,
really
I
long
bet.
game. I am in year 2 spring of Stardew Valley.
Wow.
So my farm is thriving, like
bet.
60 hours in. And then I beat my first game of 2021, Unto the End. Woo!
Yay! That's
I played it start to finish this year. I did it.
Nice.
That's fantastic. Cool.
Yeah.
What about you, Steven? What are you playing right now?
You know, mostly I've been just resting, to be honest, after finishing Under the End. But I've been playing a bit of Noita. I don't know if you guys have played that indie game. You're like a magician, and every pixel is simulated. It's kind of like the tagline.
Mm-hmm.
And holy smokes, that is a hard game. I don't know if you played like Spelunky before.
No.
Where,
I have
you know,
not.
like so roguelite, and then in Noita you can like shoot a barrel that will explode, cause acid like leak through the roof that'll cause other stuff to blow up.
So
It's just like it's nuts. So yeah, it's neat. Like yeah, I've been enjoying that mostly. I haven't been playing much else though.
It's fine, you know. I saw the trailer for Noita actually, and that looks awesome. Just like the chain effects that some of that stuff has, and like
Yeah,
some of the
it's nuts.
elementals, like
Yeah.
so cool. I was like, whoa, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. I've just been playing. I've also beat my first game of 2021, Shady Part of Me. That game was beautiful, great experience. So that's all done. And I actually did my second playthrough of Unto the End recently, which was also
Nice.
great. We'll get into that as well.
Nice.
And I've actually jumped back into Horizon Zero Dawn. I got like 67% of the trophies last in my first playthrough, but then I didn't play it for like 2 years because I just got caught
Right.
up with everything else. So I'm still trying to figure out if I'm actually going to start over from the beginning. Like I started over, but I'm trying to decide if I just want to start over to kind of get a feel for the controls again and then
Right.
jump back into my original game, or just, you know, do it all over again. But I don't know if I want to
Right.
do that because it's
Yeah.
like 60 plus hours. And I'm just like, that's just so, I don't know. It just seems backwards. But anyway.
It's good though. Like 2 hours away, it kind of lets you like play the game for the first time again, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. Like I really wish some games had like a previously on, because man,
Yeah.
I have no idea where I am in the,
Yeah.
the
yeah.
original playthrough.
That happens absolutely. Where did that happen to me? I think I was playing Hollow Knight, and then I doing like the second run through, and then I like didn't play it for a while, and they came back,
Okay.
and I like totally forgot what I had and didn't have, and like where I was supposed to go and stuff. Yeah, it
Right.
would be great to have that like the season 1 recap kind of thing. You know?
Yeah, previously on Hollow Knight.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's annoying in TV shows when it's every episode until you need it.
Right.
It's
Exactly.
so
yeah.
true.
Yeah.
It's a good
Vikings, actually, I love Vikings, but that always like recaps all the time. And it's because I think it's like on History Channel originally, and so it was like week. It's not designed as like a a binger.
Right.
And so so it's just like always skip that, then skip the other thing. Yeah.
You're like fast forwarding like every other episode. Oh my God, that's fantastic. Cool. So before we move on to our main conversation, what is your favorite game of all time, Stephen?
That's a really interesting question because like I've been playing games. I'm in my 40s now, and I've been playing games since I was like 6.
Oh wow.
And so, like the games that I remember playing as a kid that really shaped like what I am today are kind of have a nostalgic quality.
Right.
And then, but I don't think they actually hold up to the games that I've played in like the last 10 years. So
right.
Can I give you like a 2 answer, like a me nostalgia and me like
so
modern?
Something that like got you into it and something like now you think is objectively like?
Yes, exactly.
Love that answer. That's great.
Okay. So like nostalgically, I would say the game that I really fell in love with was a game for the Sega Master System. So I don't know how old you two guys are, but that might be like before your time.
Like 30s.
Okay, yeah. So it was called Zillion. And did you know Zillion?
I've heard of Zillion, but I don't really know too much about it, but I've heard of Zillion.
It was kind of like Sega's answer to Metroid.
Okay.
But it had this really cool memorization mechanic where you had to shoot these barrels and then a little symbol would come up. And as a kid, I thought they were like this weird language, but real it was is numbers that were mirrored. Oh. So like 2 6s flipped back to back. And my brother and I had all these dumb names for them, like upside down W and double B when they're really just 2 8s. Anyway,
that's amazing.
So that like really kind of got me into games. You had to like go through this whole Metroid kind of maze and rescue your friends, and that I like really fell in love with. So that's probably my favorite nostalgic game.
That's awesome.
And then more recently, I think I would have to say Below, which is an indie game done by a Canadian studio called Capybara Games. I don't know if you guys know them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a lot of people hated Below, but I thought Below was just a masterpiece in terms of atmosphere and really making kind of like Miyamoto, from Zelda has this idea that he talked about, which is his vision for Zelda originally was, as a kid, he used to go into these caves or whatever, explore around. And when you get into a cave, it's dark and you're scared and you don't know if you should go left or right. And you have to make all these decisions. And I think Below actually captured that feeling of being this lone adventurer and having to trust your wits and your smarts and your skills entirely. And it doesn't hold your hand at all. It's crushingly difficult. Like you can die in one hit to a trap that you can barely even see.
Oh man.
And then you have to start the whole thing over again.
Okay.
But in doing that, like all the design is really brilliant. Like that trap can actually be used against your enemies, and having things on the ground like is really important for finding little items and fighting enemies, and like all the combat.
Wow.
Like from a game designer's perspective, like all the systems are really smartly built on top of each other to teach you through negative feedback loops. But I think that also caused a lot of people to get frustrated.
Right.
Say it's not fair or this, whatever. And
yeah,
I think they're missing out because it's really, it's just a fantastic to go through the whole thing. It's like it's an incredible journey, and I've never been so stressed playing a game, and also so rewarded at the end of it. It's really fantastic. I thought so.
That's so cool. I'm sensing a theme here now with Unto the End, though.
I mean, it's interesting. Unto the End, it like a lot of people, it's hard for sure. Yeah. It can be very hard
for some people, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, I mean
for some,
but it's like the intent wasn't to make it hard for the sake of being hard. We wanted to,
of course.
Like we recently updated the Steam version, so you can actually get through the whole game without fighting anything.
That's so cool.
And so it's not easy. You can't just it's not a walking simulator. Like you still have to figure stuff out, and there's little puzzles and stuff. But our idea with Unto the End was. People probably never believe this given the challenge of it and the reception, but our idea with Unto the End was really to almost have like a meta commentary on combat, in the sense of like we're really very comfortable in games with killing things,
right?
And I don't know how deep this show normally gets. I don't want to get too like meta on you guys, but like we're okay with killing things, and we're okay with like exterminating races of aliens and so on and so forth. But we often don't explore in the context of killing, not killing. right? And so like we thought it would be really interesting to build. I mean, we spent 2 years building just a combat system in 2D, and then we spent another 2 years making it so you didn't have to fight stuff. And we thought that the ability to fight things and making those fights hard and rewarding, hopefully, coupled with the idea that you can not fight stuff, like makes not fighting more kind of impactful and earned. And ultimately, we felt tells the story of a father, right? Not like a warrior, not a guy trying to save the kingdom kind of thing.
Right.
The story of a father trying to get home. And sometimes he fights and sometimes he doesn't. And sometimes he needs to barter or run or use items or whatever. And yeah, that's what we wanted to capture more than anything, that feeling of a father struggling to get home and the hard decisions he'd have to make along the way, rather than like hard fights and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
That's a bit of it, but that's just like one slice. That was what, in terms of what we were trying to do, at least.
Well, I felt that for sure. Like,
yeah, it was definitely something I experienced. Like, is it worth the effort to try to find a peaceful way around it? Or do I just want to fight them and get it over with? Like, what's the journey that and the choice that I want to make as a father? So I definitely felt that.
That's awesome. Cool. So with that said, let's just get into it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, like your background and your contributions to the game?
Sure. So Sarah and I grew up in Canada.
Oh, cool.
And then we left Canada after school, university, and I worked at Microsoft for about 12 years. I was a designer at Microsoft, and loved my time there. I left as a principal designer / concept architect. So I would go around, I'd work on teams like Office and Windows and Visual Studio, and help them kind of like think about what's next, what's going to come up kind of in the next 3 to 5 years, and work with their designers and stuff like that. So that was really cool.
Nice.
But then after kind of the 10-year mark, Sarah and I started thinking about other opportunities. Sarah was running an interior design business. And we just kind of, we always enjoyed games, kind of the craft of creating games. And so we wanted to try and do that full time. So we actually left both our jobs, eventually sold our condo, and for about 2 years lived pretty cheap, like with friends in kind of like cheaper Airbnbs and stuff like that. We traveled through a little bit of Europe, a lot of South America, and really just kind of taught ourselves game design. I mean, I went to school for computer science, and my focus was human computer interaction, and I actually took the very first game design course ever.
Uh-oh.
Like the game design schools weren't as popular as they are now. So I always wanted to do games. Sarah grew up with, her dad loves games, so Sarah kind of grew up liking games, but Sarah likes games more for the art side of it. So we kind of took those two things together and just really started like learning how to tell a story with a game, learning how to do animation, all these kind of things. And then just built a ton of prototypes, like made probably about 10 prototypes of games before we landed on Under the End.
That's amazing.
Some of those are like real games, like you could play it for like 45 minutes, and some are like 5 minutes, and some are just like totally garbage, stupid ideas. But yeah, we built them, and and then we just kind of landed on Under the End. We love the Dark Souls games, but we didn't want to make a 2D Dark Souls.
Right.
Like we wanted to capture kind of like the thing I love about Dark Souls is that it I mean, there's like people have done PhD theses on Dark Souls as like a way of teaching you like through failure, and it's like the community around Dark Souls is amazing. But we wanted to kind of build a game that was uniquely 2D, but still captured some of the Dark Souls-ness of teaching you through learning, not holding your hand, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Without making like a stamina-based, heavy light kind of combat system. And then we kind of just kept working on things. Eventually, we lived with a buddy in San Diego for a while. Worked on the game there for about a year. Eventually, ran into our publisher who helped us out, kind of like during kind of the game. Part of it, like we'd already been working on it. They kind of helped us out. Then we met Microsoft. And that's kind of how like we got.
That's crazy.
Got to kind of Microsoft Under the End out on Game Pass. So it was a lot of like. Many times we thought about like just packing it in. Like we originally called the game North, and we were working with a friend of mine from Microsoft. He ended up having to leave the project. Oof. And so the decision was like, okay, take that code, and like I try and work from his code, but then you get into like weird kind of like once the game ships, then he says like, I wrote this and you
Oh,
wrote that.
jeez.
And so I ended up like throwing all that code away and rewrote the whole thing from scratch. So that was like insane. That was right after our 2017 trailer came out. Like we're like, oh, it'll be out in 2018, we promise. And then our dev left, and they were like, okay, well, that's not gonna happen. So we like rewrote the whole code base from nothing.
Man.
Yeah. So it's been quite a journey to like get onto the end out the door. But that's also like why we do it. You really, I think, especially as an indie, you have to do it for the journey.
Right.
You know, like the end result, like you don't have that much control over that. It's so you know, there's so many good games out there. There's so many talented people. You just kind of have to be happy with what you did and kind of go along for the ride. So
what an amazing hero's journey right there.
Thanks.
You mentioned some of those like early like demos and playable like 5-minute games that you had there. Most of them, I imagine, you see a lot of unto the end, like it kind of steps there. Were there like any games in the process that were completely different and off the wall that maybe could lead to a future project, do you think?
I would say all of them were way different than unto the end. Like the old, so like we did like a squad based like XCOM kind of thing.
Oh, cool.
But I like turn based a lot. Mm-hmm. Like I love XCOM and stuff, but I always find it frustrating the RNG aspect of it. Like I'm like, come on, man, you're right in front of him and you like miss that shot. And so
it's so true.
Right. And so we tried to do we were working on a system that would be like turn-based, but have player skill in terms of like the actual shots and dodging and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
And then we worked on like kind of this like 2.5D side scroller kind of thing where man, you're like bringing up like dark memories. So I like wrote this galaxy generator that would like randomly generate an entire like solar system. And then you had this like crew, kind of like Mass Effect, like a demake of Mass Effect in a way, but randomly procedurally generated, where you could like travel around the galaxy and like land on different planets and then go into bases. And we had this whole like dynamic storytelling system. Man,
I love that.
And I don't know, other stuff like that. So we were all over the place, just like any ideas.
Yeah.
We have, I don't know if Americans call it this, like butcher paper, like just like that brown kind of paper.
Yeah,
so we have like big rolls of it and just like draw ideas and then like try them out, and like walls were just full of like nonsense. So
yeah, they sell like paper towels like that, where it's just like this long, like cheap brown paper. And
yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
So I guess like what I'm curious about is because sometimes it's really hard for me just to get my wife to play video games with me. So I'm wondering like what it was like to make. Let alone make a video game, you know, with your wife. Like, what did that look like on a daily basis, and like, what did like the daily routine look like?
I mean, it's a journey in the sense that when we started out, well, first off, kind of some context. So I play way more games than Sarah does. Right?
Okay.
So Sarah plays like some games here and there. Played a lot of games as a kid, but is mostly into games for the art of it. You know, like the creative, because games to me are like the most creative thing you can take on. Like you have to be like good at so many different things,
right,
to even try and make a game, right? So anyway, she loves it for the creativity. At first, it's hard because when you work, even like I joke with people, like if you want to make video games with your wife, you have to set up at least like 3 pieces of really complicated IKEA furniture, but without the instructions. And if you can do that, then you have a good shot at making video games with your wife.
Oh man,
it's tough, man. Like you work on something and then Sarah would come up to me and be like, I don't know, that looks terrible. And it's like your heart is like crushed right into like a pancake. And so
you like go cry that night.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. So but when you learn is you develop this like, I mean, you can be super honest with each other, right? Like you don't have to have any of the fluff and you don't have to call a meeting and say, hey, do you have time to talk about this? And then iterate, and you can just really develop this shorthand, and that's what we really did. We eventually it took a bit to kind of figure out the communication style and where the edges are and separate work and kind of our lives. And I got to remember during this time we're living in like little apartments and all out of a suitcase, right? So it's like we're in Chile, and it's like literally our work setup was a bed, and I would roll out of bed, and that my desk was like right next to the bed, and then Sarah like worked in the kind of like there was a little coffee table that she would work on, and that was it. Like that was like our whole life, like 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. So it takes a while to get used to that and be okay with that. But once you do, you get this real speed from it. And Sarah and I also have really complementary skills. Like Sarah likes to be more kind of meta, and she's great at color and like overall mood and art direction and lighting.
Nice.
She's a really excellent photographer, and I think a lot of that shows in Under the End in terms of the cinematic aspects of it.
Definitely.
I'm like, I love like, so like in Star Wars, I love all the stuff that's like in the background. That Luke isn't about Luke or Obi-Wan or whatever, but are like all the stupid things that like the set designers put in there to make the world feel alive.
That's so cool.
There's like all this lore in Under the End that no one will ever know about or find out. But that I like love making all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so we kind of come at it from different angles. And I don't know. I really enjoy it. It's been a lot of fun, to be honest. In terms of like what I do versus what Sarah does, I do the programming, I do the animation.
Okay.
And then we collaborate on everything else. So like I will often what it'll be like is I'll have an idea for a room, or like our world is one seamless canvas, really. It's like 100-foot canvas stretched out.
Amazing.
But everything in order for performance, we break it down into rooms. So it's like you draw a segment, and then you're basically, when you're playing the game, you're looking at a room plus the 2 adjacent rooms.
Yeah.
And then as you go over, you like remove that room and like load the next room and so on and so forth. So if you think about it like a 3x3 grid, that would be the maximum number of rooms you can have on the screen at any one time.
Okay.
Most of the time it's like four rooms.
Gotcha.
Anyway, so I'll like make up a room and like have an idea, and then like Sarah will look at it, and then she'll add some stuff, and then maybe I'll like do a pass on lighting, and then she'll like fix that lighting or make it better. And so super iterative in terms of that. I tend to like work more on kind of the nuts and bolts of mechanic. Like I'll write like a game design doc on combat that'll be like 30 pages, and then Sarah will be like, okay, that is nuts. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. And, like,
throws it in the fireplace.
Yeah, exactly. And then gets to like the good stuff, and then yeah. So that's kind of how it goes. Like a day would be, depending on what we're working on in the project, but it's a lot of time. It's like Sarah starts something, I edit it. I start something, she edits it, and we kind of circle like that. And then when we ever hit roadblocks, it's just kind of like discussion, and
right.
Because I'm the programmer, I'll code something up, and then she'll try it and see if it makes sense. And
I can just imagine it's like, I'm pretty sure I made breakfast yesterday.
Yeah, exactly.
Tonight you're doing lunch.
Yes.
Oh man.
So was there like, it sounded, we both listened to the interview that you guys did with Darkcast, and it sounds like you guys weren't very shy about being blunt with each other, which is really great.
Yeah.
Was there any like things you wanted to include, or things that she wanted to include that like kind of like broke your heart to not be able to put into the game, or like vice versa?
A joke. Well, Sarah really wanted the wolf that you see. I don't know if you guys found, there's one like hidden dream that you can find.
No.
And in the background of the sparring area,
okay,
the wolf is like laying on the grass. It's not a wolf. It's a dog kind of wolf. It's like a very small wolf. It used to be a lot bigger, but we had to make it smaller because we had other ideas for it, but we had to scope it down. So it's really just a wolf-looking dog now. And
that's awesome. Those Game of Thrones wolves.
Yeah, exactly. Way of saying that. So Sarah really wanted the wolf to be like a character in there, and we had ideas where the wolf would fit into the story and help you out and stuff like that.
Oh wow, that's crazy.
And if you look at our 2017 trailer, the wolf is in there, chasing the father. Anyway, we had lots of ideas for that. So I think that would be Sarah's. For me, I really wanted a water section. And Sarah always makes fun of me, still to this stage. She's like, we're not, like, I'll be like, hey, babe, I have an idea. And she'll say, we're not adding water to the game. Because I really wanted to have water. I thought water would be really cool. And you could do stuff with ice. And I had this idea, like, I always think it's cool when you see like a little body of water.
Mm-hmm.
It probably comes from like Conan or something, like the old Conan movies. And then you like swim down in the water, and then you come out and like, there's this cool cave or whatever. So I always thought,
yeah,
water, but yeah. Anyway,
that would be
that was the one that stung for me.
Oh man.
What else? I guess I will say, like, right until the very end, we had plans to allow you to decapitate, cut off the legs, kind of arms of every single opponent.
Right.
So the idea was, if you did this certain set of moves, you kind of like show true mastery, and then like have this kind of finishing move. But there's like 50 or so unique characters in the game.
Wow.
And to do like 50 unique death animations, like way too much. And then also to set them up, like to set up Like there's one guy in the game, if you fake him low and he
Right.
bites low and you counter high, you'll take his head off. But
Right.
we left him in as an Easter egg. So we wanted to have that kind of thing for every
Oh.
guy, but we had to cut it. So
Yeah, I think it was I saw that video, or I saw a GIF of that. I was like, where is that? I was
yeah,
like, I want to decapitate dudes.
Like you
yeah,
texted me about it today. They're like,
Yeah.
you're like, if you do it a certain way, but I didn't realize it was just one person. Like that's
yeah,
amazing.
I didn't either.
yeah,
I thought it was like multiple guys, but that's amazing that it was just the one dude. That is
Yeah.
so
yeah.
cool. Like I came across so many details like that I recognized, and I was like, this is amazing. Like you could tell like they put so much like detail into just one little thing, and it's so cool. I love things like that where
Oh, thanks so
you
much.
have to find that in it, and
Yeah.
it's just special. Um, one of the processes that I absolutely loved going through was like just the audio, like experiencing the audio was so amazing. And I just kind of wanted to hear like some of the process for like the sound effects, like the scoring, maybe some of the minimal dialogue. Like what was that process? And because it was amazing, all of it, all the audio was just fantastic.
Well, thanks for saying that. And so just so full credit for that goes to our sound designer, Francesco Meglio.
Mm-hmm.
So he's an Italian guy. He came in kind of midway through the project. We had another sound designer who now is the lead or one of the lead sound designers for Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh,
So
cool.
he's like,
Wow.
man, I want to work on this, but I can't. Like I got like a dream job. So
Yeah.
sorry.
Right.
Right. So then so we were really bummed about that actually, because he was great. His name's Victor. But
Okay.
Fran has been excellent too. And so the process of that, Fran came with a vision of what, like we had kind of early prototypes of the game or decent prototypes of the game, but Fran, excuse me, really came with a vision for how he wanted the sound to kind of be throughout the game.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a couple things. There's like the recording side of it and capturing all the sounds, and then there's kind of the technical side of it. So technically, we built a node graph. So the entire game has a set of audio nodes that are blended between in real time
Mm-hmm.
for ambience and occlusion with foreground things and so on and so forth.
Right.
So like when you go into an area that has like a cave and there's like wind and then you go into a tunnel, all that stuff is like blended in real time. So a lot of games do that with triggers or something like that, but we actually linearly interpolate between those two nodes. Like if you're between A and B, we'll like blend those two sounds and stuff like that. So
That is impressive.
then we built a system for fear of the dark. So I don't know if probably no one ever finds this, but if you turn your torch out and you're in enough darkness, like if the ambient light value of the entire world is lower than like it's lower than 20% light,
Okay.
the game will start playing sounds that mimic what the father might be hearing in his mind, like kind of his fear, and it's relative to the creatures near him. So like if he's in the early caves, those creatures are called krilt, and so you'll actually hear like little krilt sounds. And I've watched some guys on Twitch when they have been playing and their torches out, and one guy actually like turned around and attacked behind them because he thought there was an enemy there. And I told Fran that, and he was like, "That is why I made that system like that. Like that's the reason we did that."
So cool.
So then Fran also set up occlusion area. So when you walk behind any foreground, there's like an occlusion collider that describes that that foreground, and then the sound is muffled, so it feels like
Right.
you're listening to the father from the camera.
Yeah.
And then when the foreground gets in the way, we do that. So
that's so cool.
those were big things. And then our music was done by four people total. Like Sarah and I did a ton of work, but Fran and Johnny Niddle was our music guy. They deserve a ton of credit for the overall atmosphere and mood.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. They were awesome to work with. Johnny, the music's pretty subtle, but what Johnny did was he took an old piano that he left outside for a year and he broke it down, like tore it apart and like cut strings and like used like different gadgets on the strings to like create vibrations. And the entire like musical library of Under the End is like all these bizarre instruments that you've never really heard, mixed with some classical like cellos and basses and stuff, but most of it is kind of like from this piano that Johnny broke down.
Amazing.
And then Fran recorded in Italy, recorded a cave sounds for like a couple days. I did all these like field recordings of like picking up sticks and like dropping rocks and stuff.
Right.
But the thing I think is really cool that he did was he used musical notes when you picked up items.
Yes.
rather than like actual physical notes. Like it's not doesn't there is an undertone of like sticks and stuff like that, but really it's like a harmonic value.
Yeah, I loved that so much.
And
That
when
was
he
so
first did
cool.
that, I was like, I don't know, man, are people going to like this? But as you play, I played with it more.
Mm-hmm.
It's just such a I just think it's such a cool way of like kind of signaling to the player they got something useful.
Right, right. It just felt original too.
Like in an emotional level, right? Not in a
Yeah.
classic game level. So yeah, yeah. So that was kind of that, and then all the voices. So the VO was still fun and hilarious. So VO is mostly me for the father,
That's awesome.
and man, Sarah and I were just like pissing our pants laughing because I like we don't have a yeah exactly we don't have a cool setup either. We have like I'm looking around our little place here. So we have like a bench we would put behind the desk I work at, and then
Uh-huh.
like a Japanese futon. It's called a shikibuton. It's like kind of like it's hard to describe, but it's like angled, like you kind of fold it. So
Okay.
it's like, and you put that behind us, and then like draped towels everywhere. I don't know if you ever seen that movie Hustle and Flow. How they like make a
Oh.
sound studio out of like old cup containers. It was almost not. We didn't go all the way there, but like kind of like that. And and Fran. I mean, he's like good at directing, but he also wanted a lot of stuff. So we have 16 different variants of the father's breathing.
Okay.
And
Great.
each variant has about 12 different breathing sounds, so it has variants in it.
Mm-hmm.
So we have like running when you're normal, running with your swords out, running when you're injured, running when you're bleeding to death, running when you've
Right.
been running too long, all this stuff, right? And so I don't know if you guys have ever captured VO, but it is
Yeah.
exhausting, man, to like breathe over. Like I found it like really, really tiring.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you lose your voice. So that was like really funny. And then Sarah did all the wife. And then we had a professional guy named Sebastian record for 2 different VO sessions. He's actually a heavy metal vocalist,
Okay.
and his like control of his voice is nuts. So all of like the woad guy on the bridge that talks to you, the elder, that's all like Sebastian stuff.
That's amazing.
And then Fran filled in a lot of like stuff near the end. Like I don't know if you guys have found like if you eat too many herbs, you'll puke.
Yes, I did
So that's
that.
Fran. That's Fran puking.
Oh, Fran.
Stuff like that. Yeah, he did, and he did some. There's a couple woad at the end that
Okay.
you can offer things to, but they're not like they're kind of more minor characters. Like the guy that's outside. I don't know if you found him. He's like kind of near a shrine, and if you can kneel by him, and you can also offer stuff to him. That's Fran.
Yeah. Okay.
They're the 2 monk guys that are in like the dark area before like the big creature.
Yes. Yes.
They have that like prayer, like that's Fran like did that. He made that prayer and stuff. So
That's so cool.
yeah.
Man.
When I was taking my notes for the game, I almost wrote down a couple of phrases that I heard at least 45 times because I would die and then go back to them. I'm like, phrases I hate forever.
The like the horn is something like that one fight.
Dude.
They blow the horn and then you fight yeah. So that like we kind of like this is not wasn't we were trying to like make people frustrated, but so that horn there, and then we use that horn 2 other times later on.
Yes.
And that was very intentional to be like, oh man, now I got to do it again. Yeah, so
not the horn. They're coming.
yeah.
Oh man, no, yeah, the sound design was just so well done. I'm a big sound guy. I do it for a living, and I just appreciate every second of it. So,
thanks. I'll pass that along to Fran. He'll really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, so good. And the one thing that like hooked me immediately about this game too was just the art design, the style, and like the theme, like that. I think if anything, that trailer that came out, before the game dropped, and the art is what really hooked me and how brutal it looked. So I was just curious, like, where did you draw inspiration from the art design and the overall theme?
A couple of things, like a lot of travel stuff. So Iceland, spent some time in Iceland.
Mm-hmm.
We spent some time in northern Scotland, Isle of Skye.
Okay.
A lot of the caves and stuff come from Sarah and I really just kind of exploring through lava tubes in
oh, cool.
Big Island, Hawaii. And that's why it's so dark in there in the caves, because when we were there, we both had flashlights, and it's like you go on basically this lava tube thing was like there's a guided tour and it's all lit up, and then there's like the tour guide like goes off and everyone leaves, but you can choose to go further, like in the unguided, unlit part.
I'll pass.
And everyone else left, but Sarah and I are like, oh, let's do it. So we walk through this tunnel, and you're going in, and it's, it doesn't seem too dark because you still get the light from outside.
Right.
But if you get about 200, 300 yards in, you can no longer, that light's gone. You kind of turned a little bit of a corner. It's now pitch black.
Oh my
and
God.
Your flashlights are friggin' useless. Like, they actually work against you because they create these weird shadows, and like stuff's hanging from the ceiling, and
Oh man.
like you see like I don't know if it's a stalagmite or stalactite. One of them comes from the ground, one comes from the ceiling. But anyway,
right.
There's things coming up from the ground, and they are cast shadows, and like all of the old Norse legends of like things living in the mist and all like the crazy like stories, that all just comes from, I think, from dark and not knowing things, because that totally plays in your mind. Like,
totally.
We were after walking for about 10 minutes, like literally I was walking. I've never walked this slow in my life. Like, you're walking like literally like 1 inch at a time because you're so scared, and it's all in your head. There's nothing in. So a lot of the caves and stuff came from that. Some of the early architecture in the temple area that you kind of fall into came from Hagia Sophia in Istanbul in Turkey.
Oh, cool.
So in terms of the actual art direction, a couple places like both Sarah and I really like games that are like just detailed enough for you to kind of know, hey, it's a human man, and he's like probably a northerner, and he like has a sword, and that creature's not a human. And rather than a game that's so detailed that it like challenges real life, like that is cool too, and it's incredibly hard to do that, but that's not as exciting for us. So that was one thing, like try to get a style that was representative but not too detailed, where you kind of, as a player, we wanted you to fill in some of the details.
Okay.
So that was the thing. I also am a big fan of like concept art. Like, my brother's a concept artist. He actually works on Gears of War, and so when they do concept art, when you see it for like movies and stuff, it's kind of in this like it's a little bit looser, more minimal style, and it gives the impression of the scene, so you can still slot like the different actors into it. And so that was a big inspiration. And then like Gendy Tartakovsky like does Primal and Samurai Jack, like he was an inspiration.
Nice.
Artists, John Harris is an artist we like. Guys who mostly have like a minimal style,
right?
Were big inspirations. Yeah. So that's kind of like where we came at it from. And we really wanted to have a lot of focus on kind of lighting, big contrast of like it's dark and then you get a lot of light and then you're taken into the dark again.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
No, it was beautiful. It was like looking at a painting half the time. Like,
oh, thanks so much.
I love the lighting too. Like the fact that it was so dark, you really felt that anxiety and fear going into these caves every single time, because you could barely see too far ahead of you, just kind of like your explanation. Right. And that's like one of my biggest fears, is not knowing where I'm going, like the complete pitch black and like deep water. Those are like my huge fears. And
yeah, it almost felt like a breath of fresh air myself when we'd go out to open world. I'm like, look at the light.
I see snow. I see snow.
Yeah.
To kind of go with that question, we have some questions coming in our Twitch chat, and Alex Topalia also wanted to know what inspired kind of the story, which I think you touched on, in the fighting style in the game.
So the fighting style is like, as a kind of with my background in user interface and user experience design, like one thing we always try to do is reduce something down to kind of the primitives, and then decide what makes it really unique, and then build up on that. So like, if you look at 2D, it's side on. Not all 2D can be top down, but if you look at side on, we asked ourselves, like, what makes that better, unique, distinct, special than, say, Dark Souls, which is like over the shoulder, or like old God of War, Diablo, which is more top down.
Gotcha.
And we kind of came up with these three things. One is high and low. Two is this left-right distance. And then the third one is just seeing behind you, which you kind of forget about in 3D games. So the combat system is all born out of that. That's why everything is like attack high, block high, all these kind of things, right? And we also very much wanted the game to be grounded in the sense of what the father could do. We didn't want to make like a super capable hero.
Yeah.
And a little bit of that is inspired by Punch-Out and Little Mac. I don't know if you guys have played Punch-Out.
I've heard Punch-Out, but never played it.
I played it for the Wii.
The Wii?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Wii's actually an excellent version of Punch-Out. I think it's the best version, actually. So Little Mac is like always the underdog. Mm-hmm. Even Glass Joe, which is like kind of his name implies he's not very strong.
Glass Joe.
Who's the first fighter you fight.
Perfect.
Eventually he gets good enough to give you a challenge.
Right.
And so it's really up to the player's skill to like keep their calm, like read and react, counter correctly, figure out the little tells, figure out the vulnerabilities. And that's what we tried to kind of transpose into 2D. That was really it. It's like, and then we just add things, like add a little thing, see if it worked, remove it, and kind of iterate that way. But like a lot of people don't find this out, but like in when you're surrounded, you have the ability to like turn around behind you and slash high or low, and you can turn around behind you and reverse bash. And then there's friendly fire. And if you turn around and slash and you keep attacking, you'll keep facing that way. So we don't have like a hard lock-on system like Dark Souls. We have a soft lock-on system like Arkham. And all that is because it's 2D and you can see behind you. And so that was kind of the motivation behind all that stuff. And then the other part of that was the story side of it.
Yeah.
So the story was, I laugh because story is a huge thing in games. Like actually, it's interesting for me as I read reviews of the game. Story it's kind of like, I think, I don't want to be a jerk, but I think we're confused as game designers as to what story, and gamers in general, what story means to a game. I think a lot of people feel that a story has to be like a movie or a book story put into a game. Like you're going on the journey of a particular character, and this character has a particular set of story beats, and there will be these characters that play a role in that story, and so on and so forth.
Right.
And we wanted to make it more about almost like, hey, you went for a hike and you happened to fall down a hill, and then you broke your leg, and now you have to get out of the cavern, and you ran into a guy that has medicine, and and then we made it home, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
That was kind of the idea of the story. That like that's why we put multiple endings in it. We have actually a different play mode that ties into the story. We did all that so that you could go through it a couple different times and kind of make different decisions along the way, so that the story was really like what you, Nathan, would maybe tell like someone else. Like you go and tell Jeff, hey, I played this game and like I ended up killing this guy and helping this guy and running from that guy. And Jeff might tell you, like, what are you talking about? Like, I didn't kill anyone. That's your maniac, right?
We had these conversations.
Like that, to me, that's a story that only a game can tell.
Totally.
Right? Like that it's interactive, it's fully experiential. And that is ultimately what we wanted to try and do with the game is that's the story. It's your adventures told to someone else.
I tend to prefer games like that anyway. I feel like I love allowing my own imagination to kind of take the story into my own hands. Right. I do appreciate the guided experiences, but in general, I prefer the silent characters that don't have any like obvious personality to where I can exude my own personality into that character. I just prefer those in general. So yeah, I get it.
There's actually, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, I kind of like them both ways. And I think that style really fit the way this game played. Like I definitely enjoy stories where they have a voice and they have their own personality and it plays out like a movie. But this was one of the few where like I felt like I was really making the decisions for this character and shaping him myself, and he would look a little different than how Nathan looked. Like I had the benefit of, as I was playing, I would do something and then I'd watch Nathan do it because he did it all on YouTube. Or if I got stuck, I got to watch him do it.
Or screw up many times first.
And so I would get to see how he reacted to something versus how I played through it right away. And there was times I would like try to kill someone twice and I get my butt whooped. And so I'm like, how fast can I run away from them if I just keep rolling? And then like he would stick onto it for 40 minutes.
40 minutes, yeah.
So we played very different experiences, and that's just, he turned into me a little bit of, I'm frustrated with this, I just need to get through.
Exactly.
Well, that's great to hear. And you're absolutely right, Jeff. There isn't like a right and a wrong way to do it. Like games that have a really strong sense of story are fantastic. You know, that they're as every bit of work of art and well crafted as anything else. I just think that there's this real opportunity for games to tell stories that no other medium can tell. You know, and I that's what we tried to do in some incredibly small way, because we're only, you know, a small studio, but incredibly small way with Under the End. So
that's awesome. I guess having gone through this experience and everything, because the game's been out now for a little over a month now. After hearing the feedback and everything for the past month or so, what have you learned, and is there like anything you would do differently, like looking back on it?
I think that's a really good question. It's something Sarah and I have wrestled with. I would say like the I don't think we could have done anything differently. If we would have
Right.
done anything, I think it would have been nice to have all the encounters passable without fighting right out of the gate. Like
Okay.
that is kind of was the plan, and then we've added it now to Steam, and hope to get that out to consoles and stuff. But that was kind of the idea from the beginning, and we thought in the version, I don't know what consoles you guys or platforms you guys played on, but the one that we shipped everywhere, 32 of the 40 could be passed without fighting.
Okay.
We added the other 8, so we were pretty far in that direction already. But maybe it would have been nice to get them all done, I think, in retrospect.
Gotcha.
I would say there's a decent amount of confusion as to what Under the End is or isn't. And I think the thing that has hurt the most, I think, or been hard to take in, as people saying that the game is like cheap or random in terms of how it does damage and stuff like that. And so I think maybe we needed to do a bit more hand-holding in terms of telling. Like, one thing that I think confuses people is how damage is dealt. So damage is entirely based on vulnerability. So if you're vulnerable, you take more damage, and you're vulnerable a lot as the father. Like, if you're attacking, ducking, rolling, off balance, facing away, you're vulnerable.
Completely open.
And that's true of any fighting. Like, I don't know if there's any swordsman in the world that would like jump in a sword fight or like roll in a sword. Like, that's ludicrous, right? Especially in plate mail. Or in heavy fur coat, whatever, the father's wearing. So, but I appreciate that a lot of games, that's not the case. And so there's this impedance mismatch between like what you might expect in Assassin's Creed Valhalla and what you get in Under the End, even though they're both Viking-esque kind of guys.
Right.
So, I mean, I published a combat guide that's like 15 pages maybe, that like talks about all of combat in pretty excruciating detail, but that's not in the game, and maybe a bit more of that needed to be in the game, kind of to help people not think it's unfair. I don't know, it's a hard balance to strike, because you want people, but our goal 100% was, we trust you unconditionally with our systems, which is super risky and scary. Like, we're not morons. Like, we know that if we told you how to do everything, you would find the game easier. Of course. There would be less like polarization. Right. But by doing that, you also steal that aha moment, that self-discovery from the people that do figure it out on their own. So I think it's kind of unfortunate when you hear people say it's unfair, this game's cheap, or these people are idiots, when really that was the intent of the design of the game, right? And that's almost like, to me, it's like, well, you go to eat sushi as a food critic, but you hate sushi, and then you say like, I hate sushi at the end of it. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway,
I get that. I see that. I like how logical though you approached the combat. Like, it's extremely logical, and to like, I guess, disagree with logic like doesn't make sense, and that I totally get that. I did appreciate the lack of hand holding, because it's not something that I'm used to. Honestly, I don't play these kinds of games, these really challenging, brutal, combat games. I tend to play more relaxing, hand holding, story driven, open world. These AAA games that are just trying to appease everyone. And I feel like this game, like, it feels like you went in knowing your audience, your target audience, and I think it worked out better, because a lot of these games, like I said, they try to like appease everyone, and then they end up appealing to no one, because they don't know exactly the direction they're trying to go, and they just kind of are like, well, we have all this too, but you guys, I could feel like, and I could tell that this is what we're going for, this is the intent, take it or leave it. And I honestly love that. So
I really appreciate that. And like, we put in a ton of systems to try and teach you without text. Like the reason why you roll and fall off a cliff and then drop all your stuff is to teach you, like, hey, rolling like is not like Dark Souls, where you can roll all over the place. Like, rolling is deliberate. Like, only do it when you really need to. Same why you smack into guys, and why you drop your sword, and why you take different damage when you're facing or not facing. So, like, game designers call those negative feedback loops. A lot of games use those. But I don't know. As a side scroller, like, one thing we knew we were definitely climbing uphill on was, it's a side scroller, so people will think it's hack and slash, right? Because most side scrollers, but a guy with a sword, hack and slash. So we tried to make movement heavy and deliberate, and the guy's vulnerable, et cetera, et cetera. And then the other one was Dark Souls, where a lot of dark games about a guy with a sword are like, they're very Dark Souls-y, in terms of how they fight and save and everything. And we also wanted to kind of do something distinct from that. So we definitely picked a tough battle for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I'm really proud of us for sticking with it. And I'm super, I see the like polarization, and Sarah and I both see it as like, it's really positive. Like to get someone to say, hey, you're a freaking asshole, you don't know what the hell you're doing, and another guy to say, this is my game of the year,
right,
in like 2 days of each other, like that, you're doing something right. That's how we see it, at least.
You're if anything, you're starting a dialogue with people, and it's making news because of that, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So
thanks.
Awesome.
I appreciate it, guys.
Yeah. We have a few more questions here before we wrap it up, or at least we get to the next segment.
I've just been gathering them from the Twitch chat.
Excellent.
But if we run over, I can do them in a post chat.
Yeah, well, I think the plan was to do them in the live Q&A.
These connect, though, Nathan.
Oh, okay, well, fine.
Also, we're making really good time. I'm impressed.
I know. I was gonna say. So since you just spoke recently about the update for the full passive playthrough, which I think is awesome. What are others, like some other bigger updates you're possibly planning, if you are planning other updates or DLC, or is there anything like that going to be coming out for this game?
We'll have to see, to be honest. Doing like I have ideas, like things we want to do, and we probably will do them, like fit them into things.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also excited to work on new stuff, and so
right, of course.
Our kind of the next idea we're working on is quite a bit different than Under the End.
Cool.
I think that we loved all aspects of building. Like building the combat system was fantastic, but I think the thing we liked the most was kind of the world building and lore and kind of the little experiential things.
Right.
Crafting kind of a unique art style, and I think we'll do kind of lean more on that.
Okay.
Excuse me, and less on like a challenging mechanical game. Like it'll still be. I think our next game will still be challenging, but not in every button on the controller's used and like that kind of thing. So I think it'll be a balance, to be honest. And
nice.
A lot of it is really dictated by reception. Like depending on how many people enjoy the game and want more of it, there's definitely more motivation to make something. But yeah, having said that, we're really happy with kind of how it all came together. And I don't know if you guys have found like the third way to play yet, but
I have not.
There's a decent amount of game in there, so it's like I
thought about that too, and I was like, there's so many layers to this game that I could probably play this thing 6 times and still not find everything that you guys put into this game. But I was like just picturing like, wolf DLC and water DLC.
Right. So I would love to, yeah. There are like story. The thing that I think we would do if we did those, we would there's story arcs from the perspective of other characters we'd really like to tell.
That's cool.
Like characters you see as an enemy in this one. We'd really like to tell. And actually, the way we architected the game, the player could take control of any creature.
Oh, really?
So it's all in there. Like you could fight. You could be one of the early things. Like I would swap back and forth between the woad guy that's on the bridge that you like offer. He's standing by a dead guy you offer herbs to.
Oh yeah.
That guy is like the first woad we ever did, and then the father. Like those two guys are basically like the same. They're very different in terms of how they move and run and stuff, but
right.
You can kind of swap those guys out. So it'd be interesting to like do the story of that woad. Like how did he get to that point? And what did he do
cool.
and stuff like that. But who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. That's awesome. So, well, yeah, you already had answered my question about like future plans.
Right.
That's awesome. Did you have any other questions, Jeff? Before we move on to
yeah, I have a couple. I'm gonna skip the ones I had because I want to go to the ones that people asked referring to the game specifically.
Okay, cool.
At what point in development, this was asked by Clay, who's in the chat, did you decide and finalize the concrete style and story you wanted, and what struggles did you have in sticking with those decisions?
Concrete style in terms of art, or
and I think either in terms of art or like the play style, I guess. Like,
I don't think we ever locked it down. I think we kind of had this because we wanted to tell a non kind of classically heroic story about like a guy saving the day. We felt it was important to make the father not fragile, but vulnerable in the sense of like, if you are too aggressive, if you try to overpower these creatures you're fighting, you will die easily.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost in like a Bushido Blade kind of like samurai kind of way. Like, I don't know if you guys have played Bushido Blade, but like, you can die easily. So that was like a very early thing.
Okay.
Pretty early on, we decided to have no HUD.
Love that too. That was great.
And thanks so much. That was really motivated by having the player forcing and encouraging the player to focus on the stuff that like matters the most, which is you and the opponent, and even more so the opponent like is really more important.
Totally.
So that was pretty early on. The art style, the reason I say it like never is like we're always iterating. Like right until the very end, we were like tweaking little things.
That's art.
Yeah, so it's kind of like how it is. I don't think we ever like. I think if you work at like a big game design studio, you probably have an art director who's like, okay, we're doing this style, and he builds mood boards, or she builds mood boards and like color things and stuff, and then you have an army of artists that like lock to that style, and like as indies, it's like, I mean, if you go and look at, I think when I look at like the 2017 trailer and I like squint at it, it looks like what we shipped in 2020, but like to me, it's like two totally different people made that.
That's crazy.
Game. So yeah.
Wow. Awesome. And then the last one was both from Alex and Emily. You were talking about lore that you put in this game that no one's ever going to know. What's your favorite like bit or two of lore that you snuck in there that you love that you don't think anyone's going to find out about?
Favorite is hard to say. Oh, I'll say that I thought it was really cool that in the first little cave you find where there's the guys dying and you can kill them or you can offer herbs and he'll give you the key.
Yeah.
In the background of that cave is a mural. It's very faint, but it's a mural that is a painting of the journey to the camp that you come across later, where those two guys are fighting, and you go into the little like kind of teepee, big like it's a medicine kind of hall. It's made out of wood, and there's like the medicine woman in there, and they're all the dying guys.
Yes.
That structure is on the wall in that cave because that guy is actually from that village. And he and his partner came to that temple. That old temple is made by a collection of people called the Rin.
Okay.
And all the statues that you see, maybe you didn't see, but there's all these statues that kind of look like eroded faces. Those are inspired by Rapa Nui or the Moai that are on Easter Island. Those big statues of people that are huge faces that have kind of big noses.
Yes,
those are kind of loosely inspired by those. And those are originally by the Rin people. And the two clans of, I'm going into all sorts of detail, but the two clans of Woad, the forest and the mountain Woad, both reappropriate those things in different ways for their religion and their kind of like overall religious beliefs. So the forest Woad wrap them in like a brown kind of tan cloth and use kind of these wooden kind of sticks on them.
Mm-hmm.
The mountain Woad do more, they're a little bit more like classically paganistic.
Yeah.
And they wrap them in red cloth. They use more bones. There's one fight near the end. It's kind of this site, and there's all these like sticks sticking up, and there's quite a few of those statues, and there's the one like kind of wrap that's kind of flapping in the wind.
Yes.
So those are all Rin kind of architecture and statues, but they've been taken over by these two different clans of Woad. Anyway, that whole long-winded story is to say the two Woad go to the temple, and I don't know if you guys found the meditation bead.
Yes, I did.
But the room with the meditation bead, there's a guy laying on a tablet. Mm-hmm. That is a Woad elder that is kind of buried there ritualistically. And all the things hanging from are kind of like somewhat inspired by Egyptian like burial. So he kind of like is a burial tomb.
Okay.
And all the traps that are set up are there to kind of keep the Krilt, which are the little goblin-y guys with the spikes on their backs, away from that area.
Okay.
And so the Woad you find that gives you the key, he was crushed by a cave-in. That's where the rocks fell, and then his other partner is dead there too.
Oh, crazy.
So they're now dead. And the first Krilt you find, so you kill the guy on the top, and you jump down the thing, and you jump across, and there's that trap that shoots you. And you see the one guy, and the Krilt guy's dead. He's got a spear in him. The other guy in there is actually using a Woad spear, but it has no head on it. It has no like actual spear point on it. It just has a wrap on it. And he's actually like a cave raider. He's like raiding that kind of tomb. And you actually come in and are actually disrupting him from raiding the tomb where you get the meditation bead. So that's kind of like that whole arc is kind of like
that's like some Tolkien level lore right there. I love that so much. It's like now I need you to write a documentary on this entire like lore and the religion and the language and make a book.
Thanks. I mean that's thank you. That's the reason why at the end that guy is hunting that family.
Gotcha.
Because the
Oh,
mountain
okay.
modes are expansionist basically, and the last thing they were doing is expanding to that kind of ritualistic site where the statue is not completed and the wrap is kind of flapping in the wind. They're trying to
Mhm.
expand, and they came across this family of creatures,
Okay.
and then they eventually hunt those creatures, and you're kind of coming into the journey in the middle of it,
That's
and then
crazy.
you need to make a decision as to whether now in the game you can run away from that and just get home
Right.
and let that family get killed, or you can intercede. But interceding is very hard. Like beating that guy is challenging. So
I did it.
yeah, nice,
Second playthrough, I interceded. I was like, yes.
nice.
So cool. Awesome. Jeff, before we move to give it an hour, do you have any other questions?
I'm gonna leave it there.
Cool.
I think we got a very clear history of the game, and
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll
that's great.
save the rest for the live Q&A. Awesome. So we're gonna move on to give it an hour real quick, and it's basically just Jeff and I talking about our experiences of our playthroughs, and just feel free to jump in at any moment with fun facts or whatever your feelings are to our experiences. So Jeff, why don't you go? Why don't you go first here?
Great. So I just kind of took notes as I was going. First I got kind of like a pass through so I could connect my PlayStation to the computer.
Oh,
So I
nice.
was able to sync my room lights with what was going on in the game.
Oh, that's
Yes.
So
awesome.
like when it
Yes.
was dark, my room was dark, and then
So
when I
cool.
finally got out to the light, like my whole room lit up. It was really
Oh, that is amazing.
That's
really
awesome.
immersive experience with it, and I was able to use that with my headphones.
Wow, very
So it
cool.
really felt um, like when I pulled out a torch, like I was really able to feel like I see more.
That's so cool.
Winning
Amazing. Wow.
fights has never felt like such an accomplishment to me. Like there were so many times I chose to give up on a fight, but when I would finally get it, like it felt like legit. I loved the offering trade system. I only think I found like one or two scenarios where they were pointing to where you put your offerings, and then they would come and give you something in exchange. I love that. I really like that the enemies always tried to surround me. Like they never let themselves get on the same
Yes.
side, because it traditionally in other games,
Mm-hmm.
if they were on the same side, you could just swing once and it hits both of them at the same time, and you combo them until it's over. So it felt really real that they were always trying to get like the come in on me.
Spent a lot of time actually working on that. Like that, we called it circling, and it was kind of an aha moment when we thought about that, because we started the same way, Jeff. We just let you, like, every guy was on the left side, and you just like mow down the two guys, and then
Yeah.
It's like
so the evolution of that was like, first it was guys on one side and you could take them out, and then we added you can target a guy with your projectile, like your dagger. So using you can still do this. You can use the R stick to kind of shuffle, like Dark Souls style, like I want to target this guy versus that guy versus that guy,
Oh.
or the guy behind you.
Mm.
And so you could like, so the classic kind of thing is like, there's a guy throwing stuff at me and there's a guy in front of him defending him, so I'm going to
Yep.
target the guy behind him. And we did that, and then we're like, man, this is 2D. Like, just make the guy circle around.
Yeah.
Right.
And holy man, there's still one instance of this. We built an entire system for behind layers. Like, so you could have like you could have a layer here and then a layer like here. We'd always do these like ramps, and then enemies could travel on the ramp only. Right, that
Oh.
was the original thought.
Okay.
And then we're like, holy smokes, that's too complicated. When you fall through the first cave and you drop your sword,
Right.
there's a ramp there. You can choose to go down, or if you hold the LB button on an Xbox or L1 on a PS1, you can take the up ramp back to where you drop down. That's the only place in the whole
Oh.
game that still exists, but it's still there.
That's crazy.
And then we're just like, man, why don't these creatures or animals, they can just leap around you? Like, why the heck are we building this like ramp system? So then and then we have rules on like how far you are, and whether, like, if you shoulder a guy,
Yeah.
and his buddy goes into him, his friend will jump around him.
Oh.
And then they like the enemies know like who's behind them, how many guys are there, is there a wall in front of them or not? Like if there's two guys, like they'll surround you, or so we have a whole bunch of like rules around how you get surrounded, but ultimately the enemies do try to surround you quite aggressively. Yeah.
Wow.
Like it was great.
That's awesome.
I felt really badass when I'd be able to like dodge a hit and they would accidentally hit each other. I was like, oh,
yeah.
I'm so good. Or the deer that was throwing spears, and I figured out pretty early I could just duck under those and it would hit the other guy and one shot him. It felt great. That was a particularly frustrating fight for me. Like,
Yes.
I finally was on, like, I was pursuing him, but he was backing up further, and there's like trees and stuff in the foreground, and it almost felt intentional that he stopped retreating behind the tree, and when I got to him, all of a sudden I was just dead. And
that is unfortunately bad luck. But the tree is very intentionally placed in that we use foreground a lot. You guys probably will notice to your frustration, but
yes.
the intent there was to teach you a lot to get close to guys, right? And like that little alcove in the cave before you get out to the guy that throws spears.
Yeah,
I don't know, so that's an optional fight, but that alcove is so small because we want you to like really master blocking. Because if you don't master blocking, you're never going to be able to beat like the last couple guys. Like they're really hard if you don't know how to block. And then that tree is there because we want you to run left. In that we want you to run left to see the other guy that throws spears, and then we want you to think, hey, I wonder if most people roll as soon as they see the spear after getting killed, maybe the first time.
Yeah.
And then it kills your buddy. And that's what we want you to get away from that tree. Because it's 2D and position's important, and that's kind of a big benefit of 2D. So moving, you can, like, when people get really good at the game, they position first, then they fight.
That makes sense. Well, it's like knowing your surroundings when you're in a fight. It's the same thing. So that's really like a clever way of doing that.
Yeah, it was,
even though it drives people nuts. Unfortunately, some people,
at times it did. Trust me, it really did. But overall, like, I can appreciate like the logistics behind it. Like, that's awesome.
Like, and then one last point on that one, Jeff. Like that fight, every fight that's optional, except for the last two hard fights, they're not optional. Well, now they are, but they weren't optional in the build you guys played on PS. Every fight that's optional is harder because it's optional.
Interesting.
Or any fight that's hard, it has a really easy solution. So, for example, that fight with the guy that throws spears, that can be won in 2 attacks.
Wow.
Just 2 attacks.
Damn.
And then the last guy, yeah, it's okay. I mean, that's why we.
It's fine.
I don't mean it like that. I don't mean
no.
I'm a dick. Yeah.
All
right.
I wasn't gonna play this again, but I'm definitely gonna go and play this again.
Right.
And then the last fight in the whole game, you can bring an item to that fight. You can get an item, and you can use an item that you can make to make that only 4 attacks.
That's cool.
Which is designed 100% into the game. Like, it's not like a cheese or like that was intentionally done. And in the new update, it's easier to get that item you can bring. Like, it's almost impossible to miss now. So our general philosophy was to design difficulty into the gameplay. So like those guys in the dark cave before the big creature,
right?
Like, those guys are totally optional, right? The guys in the kind of with all the big tablets, like they're totally optional. Like those, but if you fight them, they're super hard fights. Like they're you probably die like 50 times on it, right?
I watched Nathan die as I was dying. And, I don't feel alone.
But all those fights are optional, and that was our reasoning for why they were hard, because they were optional.
That's so cool.
Wow. Nathan's like you guys were talking about like positioning and then fighting. Like, I noticed in one of them there was like an entrance to this little cave room where you had to beat that guy first, and then you would go in and fight the other one. But it was such a small room that you almost couldn't see the fight. So like you almost just had to lure him out. And that's watching Nathan do it the first time, which is, I don't think that's where Nathan won it, but that gave me the strategy to move it out, and that's where I finally won it. Like,
nice.
I was like, I don't have to fight him in here.
Right. That's super smart, actually. Yeah.
The guy with the cauldron or the key or whatever. It was in the little. He's like a little cauldron with like a fire pit, I think. And that one. That was crazy.
That was a big one.
And like the first big fight with the big snow Yeti guy from Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like, that fight is 100% optional too. Like, you can just go in, steal that thing, and leave.
Oh.
And there's actually an item you can get that like will stun that guy and make it easier to steal the thing.
No way.
And we actually lit that room so that you can do it without a torch. So you can snuff your torch, steal the thing, and get out with enough visibility, so that, because if you have your torch lit and get in there and steal the key, you'll drop the key while you're stealing it. And then you'll have to go back. It'll be harder to get your torch. But we lit it intentionally so you could snuff your torch and get it without losing that torch.
That's crazy. It's those little details, man.
Yeah, I have an interesting story about that fight. I had stopped playing at that fight because I had died like twice. And I noticed, like, I would try to snuff my torch and like sneak up on him, but it didn't work. But he would stare at me for a minute, And then he wouldn't really do anything until I got too close with my sword. And then the next day I listened to the Darkcast podcast, and you were talking about how there was a fight that you could just completely like offer him something and walk through. So I'm like, oh, this must be what they were talking about. And I'm like, I can't believe I didn't think of that. So I go the next day and I go to offer him something, and he just clobbers it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I was wrong.
I was way off.
Yeah. But I felt cheap in that one because the way I did it is I would like jab his knee and then I'd roll away.
Yeah.
And I like jab his knee, and then eventually it got him. Like
I did that too.
I felt cheap, but I got the job done.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the hope with that guy is teaching you ducking, which you need
Okay.
for some later fights. Yeah. And the
Yes.
other guy with the deer as a weapon, like you can cheese him too. It's harder because he's got longer reach with the poker.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
really, that's about blocking low and ducking. Like that's the thing it's trying to teach you.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's actually a thing we thought a lot about. Like we initially thought of locking you in a fight, so you couldn't move. Like the thing about Punch
Oh.
Out is you're locked. You're like,
Yeah.
little Mac can move left and right, and that's it.
Yeah.
Right. So we thought about locking you in a fight and forcing you to like just change positions, but we thought it was cooler if you could run away. And
Yeah.
we built a super complicated pathfinding system that you never actually use in the game. But like enemies can follow you pretty much anywhere other than
Yeah.
ladders and uplifts. They will jump over chasms, like climb ledges, all this stuff. And we had big dreams of how to use that, but ultimately it was like way too complicated to really build. And so we just left it. But
Gotcha.
yeah, in some cases you can do kind of cool runaway things.
Awesome.
Yeah. Because sometimes I would resort to rolling, but it's not like a game where you can just roll forever. So
No, you can't. You get tired real quick.
I was having a really hard time with the combat. Nathan switched or recommended switching to the assist one, and like I had gotten so used to the flow of how the combat worked that I was terrible. I was worse in the assist for like
At
90
first, yeah.
minutes. It's like a rhythm, like, and I got
Yes.
really used to the rhythm. But after I finally got used to the assist, that's how I had to play the rest of the game.
Yeah.
I did finally get a moment, and it was like the second to last fight, where I just had my Neo moment. Like I watched Nathan fight this guy for 20 minutes, but I was like, oh, I got it.
There is no spoon.
Like I felt so cool in that moment, and it snapped, and then I fought the last guy and got my butt kicked.
Right.
But it was great. And like it was almost like a rhythm where it was almost turn-based, in a way where like you should like my best strategy was to attack and then wait and attack and wait.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it was when I got too cocky and tried to get 2 attacks in
Yes.
when they would just clobber me.
Wide open.
Yeah. So
Yeah, we tried to make it about like this probably sounds weird as an inspiration, but you know, when Harrison Ford is in a fight in a movie, like back in the day, he'd be like mostly getting like beaten up, and then he would like pull out something like a random punch or smack a guy with a thing, and kind of like fought not dirty, but had these like comeback tactics.
Yes.
That's kind of like, so that's why like the dagger you can stab, and the
Okay.
shoulder you can like get, but you got to really time it, and like things like, and you can duck under stuff and then stab, and jump over low attacks and stab, and
Right.
chop. And we try to use those kind of like, if you want, you can just block and counter and riposte. But when you kind of get more comfortable, you can mix in stabs and shoulders and fakes and distracts and all that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
To kind of turn the tide. And it's best to save that kind of for the end when you're like ready to kind of overwhelm the fight.
Right.
Rather than, a lot of people like throw the dagger right away, but then they end up getting beat up and then they die. And then, like, so you want to save that stuff for the end, really.
That makes sense.
It was the dagger and it was the shoulder check that really saved me in that last fight.
Nice.
Like I always made it my mission to make sure he didn't get that last. Well, I don't want to spoil anything. But, like I would hurry down for the fight, and then like I would shoulder check, and I'd make my distance, and then I like would throw my dagger, and shoulder check again, and then I would just hope for the best, and eventually it worked.
Nice.
And then like the ending just felt so like cathartic. And like the ending was like extended, and I just felt that sense of relief as the game was. And it was a great experience. I'm not gonna lie, there were many times, not at your fault, but my fault is not performing well, where I texted Nathan where I'm like, I'm not gonna finish this. But like it is an experience I 100% do not regret finishing. all the way through, and I'm really glad I did. I'm really glad we had this interview to push me to finish it, because it was a rewarding experience for me.
Well, I really appreciate it.
Awesome.
I really appreciate you sticking with it and sharing those thoughts. It's very cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you. That's my notes, Nathan.
Awesome. Well, I said it earlier, but this game is obviously not for everyone. But again, because I think, what you guys did with the game and how deliberate you were with those decisions, I think that's what made it successful for me, because it knows what it is. It knows its audience. And I think that's why it did so well. And that's why I was able to understand it better, because I knew that this was for a particular gamer. And I really feel like this was almost intended for the gamer that has been around the block a few times. I guess that's the best way to put it. Like the experience, the one who's been gaming for a long time. They're like, I know the gaming tropes. I know what I'm getting into. And then this one kind of says, no, you don't. It's like, no, you don't. I loved that so much, because I did not feel stupid ever playing this game. I actually really was challenged, and that doesn't happen often for me when I play a game. So, it was great. My first playthrough obviously was just brutally hard. I made so many rookie mistakes, looking back now on my last playthrough. But I was always so nervous of dying. And I think I just forgot a lot of the mechanics, because I was so nervous with each encounter. Faking, that was a huge one I totally forgot about. And ducking, I don't think I used ducking once until I had watched a playthrough on how to beat the last guy. And right. I was like, oh, I forgot duck. Of course. Yes, the infamous duck. So that was a huge one, obviously. But yeah, the first thing I noticed, again, how the thing that hooked me immediately was the art, just how beautiful the art was, the minimalist design. It just looked like a painting every time when I'd play it. Mm-hmm. The sound was unreal. I've never played a game where the wind sounded cold. I actually got cold listening to that sound. It was so good. I felt claustrophobic in the caves. The score was great again. I can't fathom enough how amazing that score was. And that one constant string on the low I think it was a cello, but I'm almost wondering if it was a piano string that he was
it might have been cello mixed with a piano string.
Because you could feel the rumble of that cello, and it just kept playing and playing and playing at the very end, and it's so intense, and it's like, oh my god. It was amazing. But yeah, it just made those battles just so much more intense. I love survival games that but a lot of them don't really make you feel like your life is on the line, and this one really did. I just never felt safe. Again, every time I came across a creature, I wasn't sure whether I was going to attack or not. There was many times I would die because I was actively trying to avoid the confrontation, where I was like, okay, let me just put my sword away, and they just come charging. It's like, okay, I guess we're doing this,
Right.
And I thought that was so cool, because it's like any encounter, you don't know what's going to happen, but you just take a risk, and it's either going to kill you or you're going to be rewarded for it. And I thought that was so cool. But yeah, there were moments where I was like, man, I hate this game, but right. it wasn't. I look back on it now, and it's not the game. It was clearly me just not being patient and breathing and just looking at what I had available to me in terms of combat technique and the buttons and the surroundings. But I think, because after beating it, I think I love it more than most games I've ever played that are this difficult, because of it's just how rewarding it was to beat it. I don't think I've ever felt this rewarded beating a game. So it was just a great accomplishment for me, and I felt so good afterwards. But honestly, though, the second playthrough, that is where it's at. I don't know what it was about the second playthrough, but I was like Jeff said, Neo. I got through that second playthrough so quickly. I don't know if it was the patch you did or what, but it was almost as if I had watched a training montage on my first playthrough, and then my second playthrough was the actual execution of my training montage, because I barely died the second time, and it was so cool. I was like, man, all this training and all this hard work that I put into the first playthrough, it just paid off in the second playthrough, and it just felt so badass.
That's all. I mean, we changed very little in the update. We just tweaked a couple things. So
okay.
That's what we found is people that give it another go. Then kind of what the edges of the kind of the constraint system is, kind of thing, and what you can and cannot do. And we tried to make it so you can, when I play, because I've played those fights hundreds of times now. You can really like freestyle in a way. Like you can kind of like, okay, this time I'm going to kill him this way, and I'm going to try and beat him quicker. And
Totally
wanted you to kind of have that real like ability to master things as you played more and more. So, and that was actually all inspired by Punch Out. There's a fight with a guy named Don Flamingo.
Flamingo, that's amazing.
I mean, Punch Out is definitely like borderline racist with its depictions of like it's atrocious, really. But
okay.
So there's a Spanish guy named Don Flamingo.
Okay.
And you can actually beat him with just well-timed low hooks, and you can take him from full health to 0 with 50 hooks. But it's like never can you figure like that's just a hidden secret. Like the guy down the block tells you like I did this with Don. Like that's how it works, right?
Yeah, mind blown.
Yeah, we tried to do that kind of stuff. Yeah,
you totally like you did it like perfectly. It was so good. Because like my first playthrough, I ran away from that huge deer wielding monster dude. Like I was like, "F this, I'm out." So I just like I dodge rolled for days and just like ran down the ladder. But then the second time I was like, "Let's go," and I took him out in like 4 hits. I was like, "All right," it was just so rewarding to go through that second time and just kick ass. It was so cool. But I'm gonna say this though, that the third playthrough. That I don't know. I don't know if I can do that. I'm sorry. I don't know if I'm spoiling this, but like permadeath, like basically like that's it. Like that is so cool. Like I can respect that, and I think that's amazing. But I'm good. Like I might do is I might delete my save
and
go again just so I can actually look back at some of the things you've mentioned tonight, because I want to go back and look at those things, but I don't want to have to worry about dying once and then having to start all over again. But that is just so cool.
Thanks so much. Yeah, like we put it in, and then when we played it, it made the experience so like visceral. Like everything matters in that mode. Like every jump matters. So like I come from a purely experiential perspective. Like that is my favorite way to play. But it also is 100%. Like there's no messing around with that thing.
It's just I saw that and I was like, I'm gonna take a little break.
Yeah,
I'm gonna step away for a second.
Right.
But I really respect and appreciate that, because I do love the whole concept of permadeath. I think it's awesome. Like I'm a big fan of open world survival games, and I think permadeath is so cool because it really makes you try to actively, realistically live out that journey. So I appreciate it. I think I'm going to take a little break.
Nice.
Need a palate cleanser in the middle.
Yeah,
exactly. I need some Horizon Zero Dawn in my life to kind of like, get me off that, I need like a cigarette or something. But yeah, with the new passive playthrough, I think that's what I really want to try out, is just to see how that ends, and go through that experience. But man, great game for your guys' debut.
Yeah.
It just congratulations
so
again. So
really appreciate it, guys. Like honestly, it's it means a lot. Thanks so much.
I think I'm gonna pick it up on Steam. Does it play with mouse and keyboard?
It does. So there's two ways you can play with just keyboard, or you can play with mouse and keyboard. The mouse and keyboard, so there's a poll actually on the Steam discussion right now, where a German guy actually, he's kind of like figuring out what he thinks would be a better default layout. So probably next week I'll do an update that makes it so that just rearranges a couple things, like the shift and control key like probably should be flipped. Couple small things.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, I ran out of time, and it's really hard to do keyboard remapping because of how the training works. Like all the tips in the training, like how all that's spaced.
Yeah,
you could map to any arbitrary keyboard.
Okay.
It would get really like all that layout would be like break, and I don't know how to fix that. So you can remap controller on Steam and GOG, but not keyboard. But you can play with just keyboard and then just mouse. But yeah, cool. I'll do an update that's more
cool.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, maybe I'll wait for that and I'll give it a second through.
Cool.
Awesome. Yeah, so normally what we do, Jeff and I will be the ones to suggest a game for each other for next week. But Jeff came up with the cool idea of having Steven give us some games to choose from. So I am going to be playing actually what is now apparently your favorite game of all time, Below. So
brilliant.
I saw that trailer and I was like, I love this art. I'm hooked. It looks eerie. It looks creepy. It looks beautiful at the same time. So I'm gonna dive into that. I'm gonna give that an hour, and we're gonna see how that goes. So that'll be my
one recommendation on that, not a hint or spoiler, is go into it and assume that the designers did everything for a reason.
Okay.
like rather than saying, going in with the mindset of like these guys just wanted to make something hard or they hate me or like really everything really is there for your benefit, but
right.
it challenges you for sure.
I think if anything, playing Unto the End, I think has set me up for this game. If anything, so I think I'm actually I am ready. I am ready for below.
Absolutely.
I'm more than ready now. I've earned my challenging wings or whatever you want to call them.
Nice.
So so I'm gonna be playing below. What about you, Jeff? What'd you pick?
I'm gonna be playing Minute. I was looking through all the game. Nathan said I was gonna do Minute, but it reminded me too much of Undertale, which he was not a fan of, and I am.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of the art style of Uncharted. Undertale. I don't know what it was. It just I couldn't get into it. Like it didn't immerse me enough. Like the visuals. I loved the dialogue. I loved the characters, but the visuals I couldn't get into for some reason. So
I'm gonna be. I realized I already had this game, so I'm
nice.
gonna.
Perfect.
I've never touched it, and I'm definitely gonna give it a shot. It looks like it's for me. So
yeah, I heard about Minute, and I was like, that sounds like a really cool concept. So I'm actually curious to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me the art style of like Undertale, but almost mixed with like Cuphead in a way. In the terms, it's like the old cartoony style.
Right.
Yeah.
So I am super excited for that, and I will give my thoughts on it next week.
Fantastic. So where can everybody find the Unto the End game? Where can they find that?
I mean, it's on every platform. Like Switch, Steam, Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, Stadia. It's on Game Pass, Xbox, Game Pass, PC, and then Steam and GOG.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So literally everything.
Pretty much. I mean, it's not on the Amazon. It's not on Amazon's streaming service, and it's not on the Epic Store. But
it's not on HBO Max. It's
Is that update that just hit Steam going to hit everywhere?
I hope so, but getting something
right.
porting a game as an indie studio to 9 platforms. 9 is nuts. And our publisher, they hired contractors to do the console, 2 different contractors. Some did consoles, some did Stadia, and so it's really about us talking to them and figuring out the logistics of that. So the hope is yes, but I don't know. There's a lot of moving parts there, so we'll see.
Okay, cool. Awesome. That's awesome. And then where can everybody find you if they want to follow you and stuff?
Probably the best place is Twitter, just 2 Ton Studios. And if you want to dive into the chats, our Discord server, which is linked off of my Twitter profile, is a good one to join.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to jump in on one of those spoiler conversations.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun actually. We were recently talking about how the modern controller is very much modeled after a handgun in terms of triggers and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
And how that is really great for first-person shooters and games where you shoot things, but maybe isn't as good for a game where you don't kill things or you're trying to do these different types of experiences.
Gotcha.
And how much at a subconscious level does the design of a controller impact the design interactions that you actually can have in a game?
Awesome.
Maybe too much. Maybe we went too far on that.
No. I think that's awesome. I'm definitely gonna jump in on there and check it out because I just want to talk spoilers.
Awesome.
I want to talk spoilers with you all day now.
Nice.
Cool. So, Jeff, where can we find you?
I am Zavadabadoo on all the social medias. You could find me there.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I am Adventure Hawkins on everything. On Twitter, it's Adventure without the E. And as usual, we as a reminder, we're on Twitch every single Saturday night, 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Twitch.tv/Adventure Hawkins. We do a live Q&A after the show every episode, which you don't get to hear on the podcast. So be sure to join us Saturday nights. And as usual, I have a joke for you, Jeff.
He tries to get me with dad jokes, and if I laugh, I lose.
Nice.
What was it? Hang on, I gotta find it. I had it a second ago. I thought I had it on the sheet, but I have it here.
So unorganized.
Are you stealing yourself, Jeff? You're stealing. You're putting up your wall of.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He totally does. Yeah. He does this on purpose all the time.
I'm just I do improv, so a lot of our games are like, can you play Honey, I Love You without laughing? And so I'm really bad against middle schoolers because they're all super adorable and those are my kids. Nice. But I'm really good against Nathan.
I want to hear about your improv. Actually, can we do a show just on that? That's really
There you go.
That's great. I'm out of practice for 10 months now, but in general.
Okay.
All
Sorry.
right, here's the joke. So what did the giant pickle say to sound modest?
What?
I'm kind of a big dill.
I knew it was going to be dill related. That's what got you. Well done.
Oh, thank you. Okay, cool. So before we leave, do you have your notes in front of you by chance, Steven?
My notes?
The notes that I sent you?
Sorry. I was like, do I need to take notes?
No,
No.
I think it's just,
It's the little document I sent you. Just read those numbers at the very bottom of the document there for us.
This reminds me of a time where I was in grade school and this girl that I liked maybe roll a quarter down my nose and she like put lead on it. And then like I had a line on my nose afterwards.
That happened to me.
Yeah. It's right up there with like German arm wrestling, where they make you punch yourself in the face.
Yes.
I don't know. Anyway, okay. The numbers are 5, 6, 7, 8.